Okay, what up, friendos? Welcome back. We've got another perfect opportunity here to laugh at Ubisoft, which, don't usually take pleasure in game companies doing really badly, but when it's a company that's basically lived off mediocrity now for about a decade, maybe more, and essentially have used the massive amount of influence and money that they have in the space to really do nothing, as well as to try and push NFTs and blockchain and things like that on people and make everything into a live service, sell microtransactions in single player games. Well, we make an exception for Ubisoft. And obviously the company's been having a real bad time because everything that they've released recently has been, well, it's just not been good, has it? It's been mediocre at best, and mediocre in current times is simply not enough. It just isn't. You could have gotten away with what Ubisoft are doing now 6-7 years ago, and that's what they did. But in 2024, going into 2025, you just can't, bro. There's just too much. There's just too many good games, especially not when you're competing with the best indie games we've ever seen. Game of the Year winning indie games. Game studios from overseas, from specifically Korea and Japan, and now even China, releasing just great single-player experiences. And, of course, AA games and other AAA studios in the West that are releasing as good, if not better, products, oftentimes with more attractive price points or just something that sets the game apart. And, I mean, Ubisoft are releasing games for 60, 70, 80 US dollars, constantly pushing the boundary for how much they can get from you, and then having microtransactions in there or things that people generally don't want, day one DLCs, day one season passes for content that's going to come out maybe in 3, 6, 12 months or whatever it's going to be. They've been doing this for a long time, and you just can't do it anymore. There's too many things. Many single player games now are going to struggle because everybody knows if a game comes out and it doesn't do very well and it's single player, if you just wait 3, 6, 9, 12 months, you're going to get that game for 50 to 75% off. And why is there any rush to play something that most of the time is being released day one broken, buggy, needing fixes? I mean, this is just the case in AAA, but no one is more guilty of doing this than Ubisoft. And we saw this very recently with their Star Wars game, which, should have been a slam dunk. Star Wars as a franchise, even if it's stale, has some of the most dedicated fans of anything you could make a video game about. It's Lord of the Rings status, and they still managed to fuck that one up. And the game isn't probably as bad as what people have made it out to be, but it definitely wasn't ready for being launched. It definitely wasn't ready to have people paying money for it, and especially not the price point that they set it as. He should have had another 6 months easily, and then the game might have done well. But instead, they rushed it out. A failing company rushed out a product that should have been a slam dunk. And now we get to today. Ubisoft stock is the lowest it's ever been. It's down 52% for the year. It's down 79% for 5 years. It's up over all time, but it is what it is. They are currently trading at 11.78 euros. And there's a reason for this, again, because they're shutting down another game. They're firing half of its team. They're shutting down multiple studios. And I will just say, Ubisoft, of all the big gaming companies, have probably kept on more staff than a lot of other studios, and tried to, tough it out. So maybe a little bit of brownie points for that one, but at the same time, the end result, if you're just going to ship mediocre products, is those people losing their jobs anyway. So you gave them a little bit more time in a failing company, but then obviously the inevitability is they're going to lose their jobs anyway because you did nothing to pull them out of this cycle of failure. XDefiant, if you don't know, is a game that would have tried to, I guess, compete with Call of Duty and that sort of audience, a shooter game. And the interesting thing about this is they made no attempt to save this game. Absolutely none. Because it's been struggling for a long time. And if you look up people playing the game and talking about it, there's some pros in there. There's a whole bunch of cons, but a lot of the stuff was fairly easy to fix. The issue is always going to be, though, you're competing with titans of the genre, titans of the industry, right? And if you're going to do that, you either need to do something better than them or different than them, and you meaningfully did neither. I see this as actually an intelligent decision to close this game down, but it is going to leave a sour taste in the mouth of people who played it because it never released on Steam. And if you're launching a game in 2024 on PC and you're trying to compete for market share with other games that not only already have an audience, but they're on Steam, the biggest launcher, the biggest digital platform for distribution of video games, where most of the video game players on PC are going to buy and play their games. If you don't launch on Steam, what the fuck are you doing in the industry? Like, I'm sorry to say, obviously, it's not ideal that Steam is basically the be all and end all of having games launch, because you need to be there because that's where everyone is, and as a result, they get to charge crazy high fees for the purpose of having your game sell on their platform. But that's where we're at, and not engaging with that reality would be delusional. If you want a game from a company this big to compete with other games that are on that platform and you don't release on Steam, you just set fire to your product. By closing this game down without ever trying to release on Steam, you admitted that operating this game for however long it's been out was entirely sunk cost, and you had no intention of or knowledge of how to pull this game out of the shitter. Because if you did, you'd have just released a Jesus patch, posted the game on Steam, and given it a real college try. But instead, you've closed the game, fired half the staff, closed multiple studios, because you knew this game was fucked. And we're going to see this probably with a couple of their other live service games. I can't imagine Skull and Bones. I can't imagine Skull and Bones being a game that allegedly cost tens of, at the low ball, hundreds of millions of dollars at the high ball estimation. He's going to stick around on Steam. He's going to stick around as a game. He's going to stick around with any kind of developmental or economic resources being pushed into this, when this is the fucking player base that you're operating on. Ubisoft's live service products, if they're already at the point where they're pulling the plug on XDefiant, a failure to launch, it wouldn't surprise me if Skull and Bones was very soon as well. So I'll just read you the spiel that they give their players. Thank you for your incredible dedication and support of XDefiant. It's a fucking shame the player base can't say that of you as well, because again, you could have tried to launch it on Steam, but they're basically just pulling the plug here on things that are losing their money, which seems to be everything right now. We regret to inform you that we are initiating the sunset process starting today, December 3rd, 2024. As a result, new downloads, player registrations, and purchases will no longer be available. So there you go, you can't even go try it. Season 3 will still launch, so stay tuned for more updates to come. The servers will remain active and the game will be fully playable until June 3rd, 2025. Here's a personal message from our executive producer, Mark Rubin. It's funny that you're giving it this long and didn't just throw it up on Steam to give it a few months and then announce the closure, maybe a month or two into 2025 and see how it was doing. But this is just them admitting they knew the game was never going to be anything, which makes you question who made the decision to continue pouring money into this in multiple years of development if you were just going to pull the plug after you released the game. For those who purchased the Ultimate Founders Pack, you will receive a full refund. God damn. That's good. Yeah, kudos for that. Good boy points for Ubisoft on that one. Additionally, players who have made VC and DLC purchases since November 3rd, 2024, you'll also be fully refunded. Please note the processing these refunds will take up to 8 weeks, and more details on refunds, please continue to the FAQ section. We understand that this news may come as a disappointment, and we deeply appreciate the time and passion you have invested in our community. Our goal is to provide you all with the information you need in one convenient place, while acknowledging that we may not have all the answers just yet. We are committed to keeping you informed and supported throughout this process. Thank you for your continued support and understanding. What does sunsetting mean? It means we're taking you behind the shed and you're about to hear a single gunshot ring through in the night. Only almost nobody will be hearing it because this game didn't really have a lot of players, did it? Because it wasn't on Steam. Starting December 3rd, 2024, players will no longer be able to purchase any content and can't register. The existing players that have accessed the game prior to December 3rd will continue to have full access, including upcoming content until the servers go offline on the 3rd of June. You can still use your remaining X coins. So there's always a silver lining. There'll be no fucker to play with because why would you continue playing and no new players can come in, but I guess they weren't really coming in anyway. So below you'll see if you bought any of these things, you will get a refund. And cool. I guess if you bought the Ultimate Founders Pack, then you'll get a refund. And if you didn't give them the ultimate amount of money, you won't get a refund. I'm not exactly sure why they did this. I'm not familiar with the game and what those packs gave you and whether there was, some kind of circumstance in there. But either way, that's what it is. I'm going to read a Polygon article now, which I know is going to trigger some people, but, it's words. I'm sure they can't fuck this one up. Either way, Nicole Carpenter, senior investigative reporter, talking about business and culture of games, posted this article to Polygon. Ubisoft shutting down XDefiant in 2025, laying off half of its team's two studios will close too. Shut down free-to-play game. Servers will remain on, blah, blah, blah. We already covered that. So here we go. This is what we need to see. Nearly 300 people, 143 in the San Francisco office and 134 across Ubisoft's Osaka and Sydney locations will be laid off. The other half of the XDefiant production team will move on to other roles at Ubisoft, according to Chief Studio and Portfolio Officer Marie-Sophie de Wober. I'm sorry, I'm English, don't hold it against me. Despite an encouraging start, the team's passionate work and a committed fan base, we've not been able to attract and retain enough players in the long run to compete at the level we aim for with a very demanding free-to-play FPS market. You didn't post the game on Steam. Nobody wants to play on your launcher. These companies need to get it through their head. If Epic can't buy a fan base, despite having one of the most popular games of the last decade on their platform, giving people fucking free money, giving people free games, knocking off massive percentages for developers to put their game on the platform compared to Steam, paying them exclusivity contracts, if they can't attract a large enough audience to compete multiple years into doing this, what fucking hope does failing company with no roster of good games, Ubisoft, have of competing with these other these products and these platforms? I'll tell you what chance they have. Fucking zero. No chance. Like, the delusion of these people running this business is just insane. I know, again, it's not ideal to have Steam basically be the granddaddy, right? Because as much as I love Steam, and I definitely do, and think it is a great platform, competition breeds excellence. And as consumers, we should want other platforms to do well and to compete, because that's where we get the best stuff. Because one of the best ways to compete with other platforms is to give a better user experience, to do better. If developers make more money from their games from not having to pay as much of a cut, there's less requirement to monetize us more. There's more money for them to put into patches or post-launch support or community development or games being created in the future from that studio. All things that will benefit us. There's obviously other things that they can do, like if you remember Steam back in the day, the sales that they used to do in the events and things were considerably more fleshed out than they are nowadays. Like, I'm talking probably a decade ago now, maybe even more. These are things that we should want, but at the same time, we don't just have to, out of the goodness of our hearts, support other shit companies that have an inferior product. And especially when it's one where it's from a publisher, where it's only their products on the storefront, and it offers a worse experience. Like, these things need to go away. We don't need any more third-party launches and things like that, and we certainly don't need them to have exclusivity of products that otherwise people might have played. If it's their own game, I can understand, do what you want with it, but then when the market decides we're not going to play it, we're not going to give you money for it, you only have yourself to blame for the hubris of trying to compete with an inferior product on a saturated market where you have the fucking granddaddy owned by Gabe Newell. So this is all your own fault. The game's subpar anyway, but obviously it doesn't help that you literally won't put it where the players would play it. As a result, the game is too far away from reaching the results required to enable further significant investment, and we are announcing that we will be sunsetting it. This is kind of where it is, and why, as much as it is funny and also real to just point out that they're fucked and this is a failure, shutting down this game is the only logical conclusion. The same reason that Skull and Bones will also be shut down fairly soon. I'm almost certain of it. That one cost a lot more money and a lot more time, so maybe they'll give it a little bit more time. But this is not a trend line. that you can justify to your shareholders. You cannot justify putting money in servers, operation costs, and employees and potential, more development into this trend line. It's just not possible. You're negligent in your duties if that's what you're doing. So it does make logical sense to just shut down anything that's a drain on the money and try to put everything you've got in producing a couple of really good games and then trying to claw your way back into an ascendancy instead of, as you can see, a fucking half a decade long descent, which is what Ubisoft's on right now. So with XDefiant shutting down and the hundreds of layoffs, Ubisoft said it's closing the San Francisco and Osaka production studios entirely, again cutting costs. A skeleton crew will be kept on to keep XDefiant running until its total closure. XDefiant was released in May, so, by the time it shuts down, it'll have had a year. Congratulations. Following the project's announcement in 2021, so it'd been in development for at least, half a decade or more. At launch, the game was seemingly a success. It reported to reach 1 million players within hours of its official launch. It's free to play. Of course, it's going to. According to Insider Gaming, no official player or revenue numbers has ever been released, but Ubisoft CEO Yves Guillemot said during an investor call in September that the game did not meet expectations. He's had some fucking rough investor calls. They might as well call those investor calls now Yves's fucking cock and ball torture, because that guy, he's just getting pounded like every time. I bet he wakes up in the middle of the night in a fucking, just in a cold sweat, thinking about the next investor call and some other investor writing a letter saying they're going to take over his company. In October, Rubin said on X that numbers were down due to, quote, very little marketing. I'll translate this for you. They already know, but very little marketing means our game's shit. Like, again, it's not where people can play it. And in 2024, you don't need marketing for a good product. You just don't. There's no excuse for failure in 2024 for a video game. If a game launches on Steam and it's good, people will find out about it through word of mouth. That's why indie games can literally not do a single email of marketing, work with nobody, launch just by pressing a button and it appears on Steam, and that game can be one of the best-selling games of the year. You don't need marketing. You need a good product. If you need marketing to make your game successful, you don't have a good game. You have a mediocre game and good marketing. Marketing certainly helps, of course. Don't get me wrong. I'm not an idiot. Ads, partnerships, working with creators, things like that. All this stuff works objectively, but a good product will market itself. A bad product will also market itself in the complete opposite direction. A strategy designed to, quote, to get the game in a better place before ramping up marketing to attract new and lapsed players. He wrote that he was, quote, crystal clear in that there were no plans to close XDefiant after its fourth season, following an Insider Gaming report that aged fucking real well. In most recent earnings reports in late October, Ubisoft reported that its overall sales were down nearly 20%, but the engagement metrics for its games were up. So people are playing our games, they're just not spending any money. Good metric, I guess. The publisher also said that it's decreased its staff by more than 2,000 people in the prior 24 months, a number that is likely a mixture of both layoffs and voluntary departures. Ubisoft employed 18,666 people as of September, with the company reportedly on track to continue reducing costs. This was talked about before, where they'd basically be firing a whole bunch of people, which this helps with, getting rid of a game and studios that were making the game and working on the game that was making no money. Star Wars Outlaws underperformed, Ubisoft said, but the company stayed quiet on the status of XDefiant. So quiet that an analyst questioned Guillemot about the game's dwindling success. XDefiant is behind our expectations, but the game as a service strategy remains core. How's that working for you, my brother? How is it working for you, my brother? Games as a service strategy. Do you want to see your games? Here you go. Here's your games as a service strategy. Do you want to point out on this fucking chart where the strategy is working out? Are we waiting for some success here? Because if not, I think you need to change your strategy, don't you? They've scored 15 goals against you per game for an entire season, and you've not changed your defenders out. What are you doing, my G? The line still appears to be true, said in the notice to staff on Tuesday, that games as a service remains a pillar of Ubisoft's strategy, citing success with Rainbow Six, The Crew, and For Honor. There you go then. Just continue, mate. Those 3 games, we've had some real success with 3 games. Oh, yeah? Have you? Do you want to show me? These people are fucking delusional. That's crazy. The market has never been as certain in rejecting Ubisoft's strategy. It just hasn't. You can see this objectively from player numbers, player reviews. I know social media isn't always true, and it does suffer from a bit of a bubble problem. But the fact that these games are closing down and you can see the Steam numbers for some of them, what can you say? You can also see that investors have never had less interest or confidence in this company. And yet, we're sticking to it, guys. You know, it's one day, we're going to fucking turn it around, aren't we? These guys are delusional. They deserve the failure. They do. I feel sorry for the people who work for this company, because you need to be job hunting real soon. I'm sure there's another company that can use your talents. There's a whole bunch of talented people over at Ubisoft, and it's not their fault entirely. You know, it takes a whole bunch of people, and usually a lot of higher ups, to make bad decisions, to make bad games. But this is Ubisoft. You've been working there. If you've been there for years now, you kind of know what you're in for. By the way, that's it. Laugh at Ubisoft is over for today. 2 months I give it before we're doing the same thing with Skull and Bones, and we'll see what happens. We'll see if the market continues to reject everything that these motherfuckers do. I expect it will, but we'll have to see how. What date is it that Assassin's Creed Shadows comes out? We'll find out. We'll see when that game comes out. But yeah, thanks for watching. As always, go check the links in the video description to support me further. Patreon, Twitter, Discord. All those things exist, as does Gamer Subs. You can use the code in the video description. You can get, I think it's like 15% off. They're running sales and things at the moment, which is really cool. And yeah, if you do, I'll get a kickback, and that's a win-win for everybody. I'll see you next time. Peace.